who you're sitting next to. Do meet at our rally point. We have a rally point in the end of the parking lot of Brockley, over here. Okay, do not attempt to come back into the building and retrieve your child. If they're up in Sunday school, their Sunday school teachers and staff up there will escort them out to safety. Do not enter back into the building once it's evacuated. For weather emergencies, follow the instructions of the usher and move to Daniel's Hall downstairs. It's the lowest point of the building, besides my boiler room. That's where I'll be found, until the all clear is given. For human threats, in the event of human threats and active shooters, please move to an exit that as quickly as possible. Listen to the ushers and the staff and the emergency personnel for further information. There's a designated person to call 911. Some of the things to consider when this happens: run, hide, fight, keep low, and keep your hands open and visible for the first responders to see you. Your care and well-being here at the church in all circumstances is our utmost priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We are approaching the high holy days of the Christian faith. Holy Week is coming up starting next Sunday, a week from today. Palm Sunday, the Children's Palm Parade will happen at both services. Maundy Thursday, we will be hosting Lakewood Baptist Church at 7 p.m. here in our sanctuary, and we will have a Tenebrae service on Good Friday, at which we'll be hosting the Lakewood Ministerial Association here in the sanctuary, and that also starts at 7. The altar flowers are given to the glory of God and in honor of the LUMC church staff. Now, may we breathe in God's Spirit, quiet our hearts, and allow Christ's Holy Spirit to enter our souls.
Please stand if you are able and join me in the call to worship. We gather together in the presence of our shepherd God. Who leads us in the way of righteousness and whose goodness and love never stops pursuing us. You may be seated. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. The gospel lesson for today is John 10, 11 through 21. Please stand if you're able for the reading of the gospel. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. When the hired hand sees the wolf coming, he leaves the sheep and runs away. That's because he isn't the shepherd. The sheep aren't really his. So the wolf attacks the sheep and scatters them. He's only a hired hand, and the sheep don't matter to him. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep. They know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I give up my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that don't belong to the sheep pen. I must lead them too. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. This is why the Father loves me. I give up my life so that I can take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I give it up because I want to. I have the right to give it up, and I have the right to take it up again. I received this commandment from my Father. There was another division among the Jews because of Jesus' words. Many of them said, he has a demon and has lost his mind. Why listen to him? Others said, these aren't the words of someone who has a demon. Can a demon heal the eyes of people who are blind? This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
How's everybody doing? Good. I'm fighting something, though. I got something started to hit me, a little cold or something on Monday, so I'm not going to shake a lot of hands or give a lot of hugs later, all right? So we are kind of nearing the end of a series that we've called Journey to the Cross, and we're going to pick up today in John 10. And so you guys, I think you did John 11 probably last week. You did Lazarus, right? So if you haven't been here, you don't have to, have watched every sermon or whatever to follow along or to keep up. But it's interesting, and what we've seen throughout the Gospel of John is Jesus begins with a small, well, he begins by himself to a degree, and within a few chapters, we end up at Palm Sunday, where it's the whole city, right? And so it's seeing this kind of progress along the way is kind of the idea of this series. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about the light, right? You remember that Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And what that was, it was a call, right, back to the pillar of fire in Exodus. And what he was saying was, I am that light. I am the light in which you should orient your life around, right? Remember we said that? And so it's not so much me shining his light where I want to go, right? But it's him being the light and me pursuing in that and pursuing in him. And then, right, I think it was probably be John 9, was, one of the most famous stories of Jesus, the healing of the man born blind. And so it wasn't that he had healed a blind man, because people do that, had done that in the past, but Jesus had healed someone that had been born blind. And it was like, that doesn't happen. They're like, who is this guy, right? What is going on that people are following him, right? And it's because Jesus is doing some things, and this is what John wants us to understand, is that Jesus is doing things and saying things that no one else says or does. Right? He's talking about himself, that he is one with the Father, and he says, I am. And we talked, all these kind of claims to being God. And so even with the Lazarus story, right, it was not that he came back to life, but it was that he came back to life 3 days, right? Because in the Jewish culture, after 3 days, you were dead, right? You're just dead, and then there's dead. Like, you can come back when you're dead, but not when you're dead. So that's why he waited the 3 days, right? It's like so he could say that no one's done what I'm doing. Because it's a sign, and that's what John continues to tell us. It's a sign. And so in chapter 10, there's a lot of shepherd talk, all right? There's a lot of shepherd talk. And so normally, when I write my sermons, I tend to take the main text, which would have been John 10, and then kind of extrapolate out into some other areas of the Bible and pull some things in. But what I'd rather do is focus on maybe 3 other shepherd passages, and then we're going to tie them back into John 10 as we go along. So, shepherds, when we think of a shepherd, a lot of times, even in today's time, we think of maybe it's a herding, maybe there's a sheepdog, or there's herding dogs, and we're kind of moving sheep along from one area to the other. Or even when we think of shepherds from the New Testament or the Old Testament, right, when we have our nativity scenes, right, we have that, and we dress up one of the kids, and they get the beard, and they get the hat, and it's crooked, and they're so cute, right? They're so cute, and it's like shepherds aren't cute, right? Like if you actually look, if you know what shepherds are, you know what shepherds are doing. It's kind of a dirty, rugged, dangerous job, and so one of the passages that I'm always reminded of when I think of shepherds, and when I was kind of thinking through this passage was the 23rd Psalm. And so I wanted to, let's go to 1 Samuel 17. This is the conversation that David, he's not King David yet, but he's David, and he's looking after his dad's sheep, and there's this Philistine, right, Goliath, and he is just taunting the Israelites, and he just says, come out and fight me, right? You know this story. And so remember, David is just kind of aghast. They just can't believe that we're letting this one guy hold us up. And so this is how the conversation goes in 1 Samuel 17. Pick up at verse 32. It says, David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. So Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man. And he's been a warrior from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. And when it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. And it's like, you're chasing lions, right? It's not just fighting off a lion, right? He says actually the lion would get the sheep and start heading off. And David's like, no, not so fast. I'm going to chase down a lion, right? That's a shepherd, right? But why does he do it? He says it's because they're my father's sheep. Right? He said, I'm tending my father's sheep, and I'll lay down my life for my father's sheep. And so if you look at John 10, right? John 10, verse 14, he says, this is what Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, and just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And so that's the shepherd, when Jesus is saying this, the shepherd, this is what he does. He fights for you. He goes after you. He looks for you. And it's so good to know that we have that God looking for us and fighting for us. And if you've ever been in a place that you've needed fought for, that you've needed someone to come look for you, you needed someone to believe in you, that you're worthy and that you have value. Like that's what the shepherd and the sheep is. Now the other passage is the one that we had read earlier, the Psalm 23, and we know this passage, right? We know Psalm 23. If you were grown up in church, actually most of us know it in the King James Version, even if you don't own a King James Bible, right? So the passage begins with, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. It's like, so this, I think when you look at the psalm, right, so maybe it's poetry. This is David writing this psalm, so maybe it's poetry or it's a song or whatever it is. I feel like that's kind of the title. Like the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And then when you read the rest of the passage, it kind of extrapolates out what it means to be a shepherd and what the good shepherd is. And so he says, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And so it's like, so why do I lack nothing? Right? It's like the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? I lack nothing. It's because the good shepherd is always providing for the sheep what it needs in the moment. What it needs in the moment. That's what a green pasture is like. Well, what is a green pasture for us? A green pasture is whatever you need in that moment that you're in. That the shepherd knows what the sheep needs. Right? And so, but my favorite part of this passage is it says makes. Right? It makes me lie down in green pastures. And it's like for me, there was a time in my life, it wasn't long ago, it was where I was lost. And I was in such bad shape. And I didn't know what I was doing. I called it my quarter life crisis. All right. I was just kind of, I didn't know what God was doing. I didn't know what I believed anymore. All those things. And so what I did is I had resigned my pastorate at my previous church, and I went and got a full-time job. And when I say full-time job, I mean 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it was at nights. At nighttime, when you're working 12 hours from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., do you know who there is to talk to? No one. There's no one to talk to, except. And so this is what I was. I was kind of in a bad spot, and I was alone a lot with my own thoughts. And then I did have some people to talk to, though. Some pretty rugged, traveling construction workers. And they have stories. They have good stories. They got some rough stories I would never tell up here, but their stories and it was like God was saying, you have to stay here. You have nothing else to do. You're going to sleep and work, and you're going to listen to these stories, and these stories are going to be a green pasture for you, and you're going to decide what you really want to do, right? And so it was this passage is so. When I first heard it and I was in the middle of that experience, I just realized that's what God's doing. Like, that's where I'm at right now, right? It's like you're just going to sit here in this pasture, and you're going to learn, and you're going to become aware. And so we have that shepherd. Like, that's our shepherd. He says, you've got to lay down right here sometimes, right? Sometimes just stop. Sometimes it's just hold, relax, take this in, right? That's a good shepherd. That's a really good shepherd. In verse 2, so he says, so to the shepherd, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And he guides me along the right path for his name's sake. That's tough. That's tough. Because we kind of want things to be about us. It's kind of our nature. Like, I kind of want it to be, like, I want you to rescue me, but I want you to rescue me for me, right? And so there's a bit of a tension that we have to manage between God going, no, I'm doing this actually for me, and the John 10:10 passage where Jesus says, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. Do we have that? Or, yeah, to the full. Some say more abundantly. And so it's like, okay, so is this about me, or is this about God? Is it about me having abundant life, or is it about his name's sake? I think they're both. I actually think they're one and the same. Like for me, as a father, I want nothing more in this world than to raise my children into adults that have fulfilled lives, right? It's like, I don't care where it is, when it is, with who it's with, and how it works. I want them to be fulfilled. And the reality is that reflects on me, doesn't it? Think about it this way. You're at Giant Eagle or Mark's. I don't know which one you go to. I like Mark's, smaller. And you see a 4-year-old and his parent, and they're losing it, right? Have you ever seen this? Well, you've seen this, right? Just losing it. Right? Excuse me. Losing it. And our first thought is what? It's, if I was that 4-year-old, I would have been much more mature. I would have distracted myself with something of more important things. I would have apologized to my mother and those around me and said, I apologize. I was an awful 4-year-old. No, that's not what we do, right? What do? We go, if I was that kid's, yeah. Why do we say that? Because the actions of the child reflect on the parent, good or bad, right? And we don't know the story. Like, there's 1,000 stories of why that's happening, but what's inside of us says those things. And so we reflect, and so that's what God's going, listen, Jesus saying, I want you to have life, and I want you to have it more abundantly, and it's for my name's sake, right? It's so that when people look at you, they go, who's your dad? Like, who's your father? Right? I want to know him, right? And so we're conformed to the image of God so that we might have life more abundantly, and then people will look at our Father, right? That's kind of how that works. So in verse 4, he says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. When you're staring darkness, when you're staring darkness in the face, right? Because that's where David's at. Like, I don't know what part of this life is. Maybe it's in that moment where he has killed Uriah. He's taken Uriah's wife. And maybe Nathan has kind of convicted him of what he's done. I'm not sure exactly where this is happening, but David is experiencing a darkness, right? And his child dies because of that. And it's like, what do you do in that moment? And David says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Right? I don't have to be afraid because I know the one that I'm following. I know the one who has my back. I know the one that has my front, right? I know the one who is next to me. He is impossible to defeat. And that's 1 John 4:4, you, dear children, are from God and have overcome them because the one who is in you, right, is greater than the one that is in the world. And so that's why I can have comfort in uncomfortable situations, because I know who has me. I know who holds me. And I know that he is way bigger than anything out there. And that reflects on God too, that when people see you standing after a fight, when they see you worshiping or praising a God after you've been through hell, like that, people look at that and they go, wow. Well, I've talked pretty openly about my wife and I's relationship over the past 6 years or so, and listen, I'll tell you, in the last last month and a half, I've had 3 couples, not even from this church, that have just said, hey, we're not making it. And I don't know how y'all made it, but I'd like to know if you'd tell me, And it's like that. And it's like, then what do? Do I point to me? I can't point to me. I didn't do it. And so I point to the Father, right? It's like, I know. And so people see that. They see when you're victorious over something, that they can look to the person that is in your corner. And so we're reflecting all the time onto the Father. Shepherds also, let's keep going, verse 5. It says, he prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. It's like in the presence of my inadequacies, in the presence of my depression, in the presence of my past failures, in the presence of people that want to see me fail, right? In the presence of just me knowing me sometimes, right? It's like we all have an enemy. I don't know what your enemy is. A lot of times I'm the enemy of me. Like, no one's lied to me more than I've lied to me. No one's let me down more than I've let myself down, right? And so, but even in that, in the presence of all that, God goes, I've still got a blessing for you. I've still got a table set before you. In fact, I want you to sit down at the table, and I want your enemies to watch. I want them to watch you eat. Because in the middle of that, in the midst of that, that's what everyone sees, a reflection of the Father, that he feeds you and he blesses you, even in the midst of some of the biggest pain, the biggest trials, your biggest failures. The Good Shepherd keeps moving you towards green pastures and giving you the things that you need. There's another passage. Well, and even before that, that's John. It's the other side of John 10:10, right? It says the thief, right, the enemy, comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? But I have come to my life and have it more abundantly. We have an enemy, right? And so being aware of an enemy, it will really help us when we're walking on this path. But in Jeremiah chapter 23, there is now Jeremiah is maybe one of my favorite books of the Bible. Basically what's going on is the entire nation of Israel is in a 40-year timeout. All right, he said, "You're going to timeout. Go stand in the corner." About 40 years, something like that. And the reason was because Jeremiah was going to the people and he was saying, "Listen, you're not living the way God's called you to live, and that's going to result in some pain." And the other prophets, they'd go, "Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. We're God's people. We're the people of God. Nothing's going to happen to us." It happened, right? It happened. They were overtaken. They were all put into slavery. And this is kind of where that Jeremiah 29:11 passage comes from. Like, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future," right? Like, he's telling that to a people that are in timeout for 40 years. Like, there's a plan. I know it doesn't look like one right now. That's a different sermon. All right, so you got to go back in verse 23. This is kind of what's going on in the midst of that. He says this, "Woe to the shepherds," right? "Woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord." Right? So we have some bad shepherds in the mix. And I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago, that the Pharisees in John 8, they were not doing the thing that God had called them to do. They were not being what the people of Israel needed. And so they were bad shepherds. And so it says, verse 2, "Therefore, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says to the shepherds who tend my people. Because you have scattered my flock and driven them away," right? He actually blames it on them, right? You scattered my flock by not telling them what they needed to hear and not being what they needed you to be. I blame you. "You have driven the flock away, and you've not bestowed care on them. I will bestow punishment on you for the evil you have done, declares the Lord." And then verse 3, I love this. He says, I myself will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I've driven them and will bring them back to their pasture where they will be fruitful and increase in number. I will place shepherds over them who will tend them, and they will no longer be afraid or terrified, nor will any be missing, declares the Lord." Now watch this. The days are coming, right? This is 1,500 years before Jesus. I'll get that right. I'm not sure. It's close to that. "When I will raise up," says that the days are coming, declares the Lord, "when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, a king who will reign wisely and do what is just and right in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will live in safety. This is the name by which he will be called, the Lord, our righteous Savior. So then the days are coming, declares the Lord." And this is a wild statement. I'll explain a little bit. "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when the people will no longer say, 'As surely as the Lord lives, who brought the Israelites up out of Egypt.'" And so so what Jeremiah is kind of professing is the same thing that the Jews are asking in John 10. In John 10:24, the Jews who were there gathered around him saying, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." And so everyone has been waiting for this guy to show up. They've been waiting for the Messiah. They've been waiting from Isaiah and Jeremiah, and they've been professing, oh, this is going to happen. There's this king that's coming. Something's going to happen, and there's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. But what's so crazy, so Jeremiah says there's going to be a day when you'll no longer talk about the Exodus. Right? He says there's going to be a day when the Moses thing isn't actually what you're going to talk about. Right? And listen, the Moses thing was the entire structure of the Jewish religion. Right? It was the very thing. It was the center point, right? I mean, if we've been following through this whole series, it's like we're always going back to Exodus. Like we're always, the pillar in the wilderness. It was an Exodus, right? There's this idea, and it all kind of circled. We talked about the candlestick festival, and it goes back to Exodus, and there's all these things. It's the center point, and Jeremiah goes, actually, there's going to be something new that's going to blow you away. It's going to be so amazing that you're never going to talk. This isn't going to be the thing anymore. And in 2023, 2,000 years, right, after Jesus is raised from the dead. Okay, so 3,500 years since Moses today, right, roughly. The most widely celebrated story in the entire world is the cross of Jesus. He said that 2,500 years ago. And we're sitting here today. Like it's Christianity, it's Islam, and then it's atheists, right? That's kind of the top three in that order, right? So we're sitting here just, how do we not know? How do we not see that or talk about, like, it's been celebrated or it's been prophesied so long ago, and then we're here sitting in it right now. In John 10, verse 14, let's kind of move towards the end of this. He says, this is Jesus, he says, I am the good shepherd, right? And so that's the echo of Jeremiah, right? I'm gonna come down myself. It's another call to God, to being God, to being the one that's always been. He says, when God said to Jeremiah that I myself will come down, and then, right, John 1 is the word became flesh and made his dwelling, right? Jesus like, no, I am not just a shepherd, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the one that has been told was going to come. He says, I know my sheep and my sheep know me. And just as the Father knows me and I know the Father and I lay down my life for the sheep, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. And that's us, right? The non-Jews, the Gentiles. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is I lay down my life, only to take it up again. And no one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. Now this is, he's telling this to the Pharisees that are trying to kill him. Right? He goes, good luck. It's up to me. I decide when my life's over. And then actually, I'm going to decide that it's not over anymore. Right? That's what he's saying. Excuse me. The reason my Father loves me to lay down my life, only to bring it up again, no one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. And the Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, he is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him? But others said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? And so Jesus is just continually butting heads with the Pharisees. And they keep trying to make up lies. They keep trying to say things that aren't true. The problem with that is everyone's watching what Jesus is actually doing. Right? They're like, I know you keep saying this demon possession stuff, but remember the born blind guy? Not blind anymore. Like they don't do that, right? It's not a thing that's happening. Like, so the thing is, like, we have to live in such a way. There's a passage in 1 Peter. It says, dear friends, he says, I urge you as foreigners and exiles, right? So he's And that's kind of what we are, right? This is not our world, really. Like, this is not our kingdom. This is not our country. Like, we have a kingdom, like, God's kingdom is our home. And so he says this, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Verse 12, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits. That's what Jesus is doing. Right? It's, no matter what they say about him, everyone else goes, yeah, but are you watching him? And that's the life that we're called to. It's the life we're called to as a church, and that's one of the things that we're going to continue to do is to go out and love our community, serve our community. That way, when anyone says something bad about a church or people go, yeah, but have you seen Lakewood United Methodist Church? They're just out there loving people. They're just out there serving and just being Jesus to people. But that also, and I think more importantly, is not so much that we're doing it as a church, but that we're doing it as individuals, right? Because the best way to change your family is to demonstrate Jesus in your own home, is to live as best you can among your family, your friends, your neighbors, that they see you. And anytime if someone says something bad about you or makes something up about you, you can just brush it off, right? Because people are watching. And that's the life. That's what we're doing here, church. We're going to live like Jesus. We're going to brush off the haters. And we're just going to be like him. God bless.
Let us pray. Eternal God, people are watching, and you are watching. May we know your gaze. May be aware of the constant gaze of people, those we know, those whom we don't know. Lord, let this knowledge not lie heavy upon us, but rather may we know the liberation that comes from knowing that you are our shepherd. You are the shepherd who leads us, who guides us. May we know above all, we may know Jesus, the Good Shepherd, the one who has gone before us and who has defeated even death itself. And so as we go forth from here, as we live our lives in this world under the gaze of people we know, people we don't know, people who are watching, may we live in a way that reflects the fact that it is you above all whose gaze and whose guidance leads us. May we in this space today be open to your presence, receive your Spirit, so that as we go forth from here, we may simply be your people. So come to life among us and within us as individuals and as a church, so that when people see us, they may know your truth, and may they see faith, hope, and above all love, the greatest of these love. May all who watch us see that, see your love shining forth and blossoming in Lakewood, in Cleveland, in all the areas that surround. May we know you so that people may know you, the living God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. We ask this in his name, as we, your people, with one voice lift up to you the prayer that he taught us, saying, Our Father, and now we come to our time of offering. You can give by the traditional way. Put your money in, or put your offering in the collection plates as the ushers bring the collection plates forward. And also, I'd call your attention once again to the QR code on the back of your bulletin. You can use that. If you have a smart device, you can use that to go directly to our website and make an offering, as well as prayer requests, as well as filling out a connection card. You can do it that way. But however you give above all knowing that Jesus is with you, Jesus is guiding, Jesus is prompting. Will the ushers please come forward?